A quick note before we get started. This episode contains cursing. Please take note if you're listening with young Sox fans.
Previously on the Curse Breakers.
So, the Curse of Bambino is mythology. It's not real, but like a lot of mythology, it's real if you think it's real. So after the 1919 season, Harry Frazee sold Babe Ruth to the Yankees. And after that, it went bad for Boston.
There it goes! And the Yankees are going to the World Series!
And hearts across New England were smashed.
Which was fuel for the fire for the curse.
Okay, so the 2003 season ends with disappointment yet again, and then the 2004 season arrives. What changed?
They had a new manager, Terry Francona. They had great talent.
Here we are, just a bunch of idiots and just dudes. We had some superstars, but we had dudes.
I mean, it was a family, and you don't get that too often.
And I felt that we weren't the best players, we were the best team.
It's October of 2004, and the Red Sox are headed into the postseason, seeded as the wild card.
It is fall. The hay is in the barn, and the Red Sox are in the playoffs. The anticipation and hope of a World Series title surpassed only by the apprehension and dread of all that can and has, and no doubt will go wrong again.
The Sox finished the regular season in second place in their division, once again behind the Yankees.
Like lighthouses, maple syrup, and quaint colonial inns, baseball cynicism contributing to New England's charm since 1918.
In the first round of the playoffs, they swept the Anaheim Angels.
Swing and a fly ball to left field! Way back! Way back!
After that, the Red Sox advanced to the American League Championship Series. Now, they were just one step away from the World Series. Their opponents were their fiercest and most hated rivals, the New York Yankees. If they wanted to break the curse and undo 86 years of bad luck, they'd have to overcome A-Rod and the evil empire. But the Sox felt confident, and hopes were high, that this was their time. But they lost Game 1.
Game over. Yankees win Game 1.
And then they lost Game 2.
Game over.
And next, in Game 3, the Sox lost at Fenway Park in a crushing 19-8 blowout.
Boston has written another chapter into their tortured history.
The Yankees were doing it again, breaking Red Sox fans' hearts. Everyone was counting Boston out. No team had ever come back from a 3-0 deficit in a 7-game series. If past is prologue, then they were done. And Sox fans were devastated.
I mean, it was embarrassing. And it really looked like we were going to get swept. And I think most people were thinking, good, let's just end this now.
4 straight, that means you have to play perfect baseball 4 games in a row. You can't do that.
At that point, I was like, it's over. Like, it's almost like in a relief. I was like, I don't have to have hope anymore. Like, it's so over. On to next year.
Boston Globe columnist Dan Shaughnessy wrote a scathing review of the Sox performance against the Yankees. The headline read, "Time to show some guts or go belly up."
The lead paragraph says, so there, for the 86th consecutive autumn, the Red Sox are not going to win the World Series. That was on the front page of the Boston Globe and the Sunday Globe after the 19-8 Game 3 loss. Now, further down the column, I said, if these guys lose again tonight and flop this sensationally, they will go down as the biggest pack of frauds we've ever had here.
Dan's article and the scathing pack of frauds line was printed in the Globe and packed onto trucks and delivered all across New England. A copy wound up at Fenway Park and in the hands of Red Sox first baseman Kevin Millar. Kevin was in the clubhouse getting ready for Game 4 against the Yankees.
We were down 0-3. I'm using the restroom, and back then you read the paper. Now everybody's on devices and phones and streaming.
So there's Kevin, sitting on the toilet, the newspaper spread across his knees, reading Dan's article. And Kevin, he was getting mad.
And when you saw a pack of frauds, I think that was the first time I was pissed off.
Outfielder Johnny Damon read the article, and he got mad too.
Being called a fraud, I mean, that's jail time in the real world.
That pissed me off. That pack of frauds, I'm like, fraud is a big word, right? They could be better than us, the Yankees. We could be playing like crap. But when you call somebody a fraud and a pack of frauds, I was like, okay.
After he'd finished reading Dan's story, Kevin pulled up his pants and stormed out of the bathroom. He was ready for war and started to rally his teammates.
All of a sudden it was like, yeah, bro, that's it. We're not going. And then it was like, don't let us win tonight. This was the moment.
The players headed out of the clubhouse, down the tunnel, and out onto the field. And that night, the stakes couldn't be any higher. If the Red Sox lose, they'll prove Dan Shaughnessy right. They'll be swept by their most hated rivals and go down in history as frauds, chokers, and losers. Win, and they stay alive, and the series continues. Victory, or infamy. It's as simple as that. From the Boston Globe, I'm Jasmine Aguilera, and this is The Curse Breakers, Part 2, Sea of Joy. Over the entirety of his baseball career, Terry Francona played in hundreds of games, stepped up to the plate thousands of times, and suited up in ballparks all across America. Terry had spent his life in baseball, and along the way, he built up routines and rituals. And before Game 4, he did exactly the same thing he always did.
I'd go down to the dugout about 40 minutes before a game. That was always my ritual. I loved it because it was quiet. Nothing had gone wrong yet. And as the players trickled down into the dugout, you're there and they kind of have to go past you. I've always done that.
Terry stood there under the floodlights, gazing out across Fenway Park. From there, he could see the Green Monster, the 37-foot green wall towering over left field that can mean the difference between a home run or a heartbreak. He admired the old scoreboard, the iconic Citgo sign, and the empty grandstand that would soon be packed with Sox fans.
If you love baseball, there's no better place to be a part of baseball than at Fenway. I mean, it's like a cathedral.
Terry knew how big this game was, knew that everything was on the line tonight. But as he looked out on Fenway, he felt calm, relaxed, and he felt ready.
I don't remember fearing anything. We're down 0-3. I just thought, okay, we're gonna win. We're gonna find a way to win tonight. And that's kind of how we felt. That's how we're built.
Terry's quiet moment ended when fans started pouring into the stands with their Fenway Franks and their beers. When Kevin Millar ran out of the tunnel and onto the field that night, he was still pissed. Dan Shaughnessy's article really stung. Dan wrote that if the Sox lost Game 4, they'd be remembered as a pack of frauds. He also said that a loss would, quote, make them look like cocky, dopey slobs who folded when it counted most, end quote. Kevin wanted a word with Dan, and he found him outside the dugout.
And I can remember that moment like it was yesterday. And how it was caught was there was a boomstick.
Kevin's exchange of words with Dan was caught on that boomstick, and by a camera crew. In the footage, you can see Kevin wearing his beaten-up Red Sox hat and a gray warm-up sweatshirt. Dan's in a blue sport coat, and he's got a press pass around his neck. The two men are smiling. They've known each other for years at this point, but the exchange is still tense.
Well, let me tell you, don't let us win today.
Okay.
Then we got B tomorrow. Then we got Shield Game 6.
Okay, that's the start.
Then Game 7, anything happen. We can have you out there. I'll put you a second base. Dan Shaughnessy hitting ninth.
Start.
Then you can take that fraud comment back, and then we'll be in the World Series. This is it. Don't let the Sox win this game. You cannot count the Sox out. Because if there's a group of idiots that can do it, it's us. It hasn't happened in the history of baseball. But don't let us win today. That's all I'm trying to say. Just put us to bed tonight. Put us to bed. Put us home.
Kevin was threatening Dan, the Yankees, and really the world by saying if the Sox won that game tonight, they would win the World Series. If the Yankees didn't knock them out in that moment, then not only would they come back in the series, but that little bit of confidence would propel them to the championship. He was energizing his team with pure optimism.
We'll be all right. We just don't make it easy on ourselves. Down and out, and then pow! Sox Nation take over.
Kevin ran back onto the field to finish warming up, and then it was game time. The first two innings were slow. Both pitchers didn't yield a run. But in the third inning, the Yankees star player, A-Rod, stepped up.
A-Rod goes into left center field. Back at the wall, Alex Rodriguez has hit one over the monster.
It was looking bad for the Sox, and Kevin Millar, Terry Francona, and Johnny Damon, they were all starting to look like frauds.
Bellhorn knocks it down, can't make a play, and the Yankees lead again.
In the bottom of the ninth inning, hope was draining out of the stadium. Yankees closer Mariano Rivera walked up to the mound to finish off the Sox.
Rivera trying to get another save and send the Yankees into the World Series as we go to the bottom of the ninth.
Mariano Rivera is the greatest closer of all time. So chances are this game's over, and they're going to lose 4 straight. Ignominious defeat. Disgrace, shameful, frauds.
A familiar feeling of despair was closing in on Sox Nation.
First of all, I thought the Yankees were going to win. I was planning my Red Sox dejection picture.
That's Boston Globe photographer Stan Grossfeld again. Stan left his original position in the stands and moved to third base. He was so sure that the Sox were going to lose that he was lining up his shot of Yankee jubilation and Red Sox desolation.
I knew that the Yankees would charge out of the dugout in the foreground, and they would pig-pile Mariano Rivera, and the Red Sox would then be in the background, dejection on the bench, the last guy walking back to the dugout with his head down, and that would line up as a picture.
Dan was also preparing to cover the inevitable defeat. He walked down to the executive suites where the president of the Red Sox, the late Larry Lucchino, was starting to write a speech to fans.
Larry had the legal pad out. They were going to apologize to Sox fans. They weren't expecting good things in 2004 because so many bad things had happened for 86 years. The Sands were running out on another Fenway summer.
Just when all hope was lost.
That's when Millar drew the 5-pitch walk.
Just turned midnight here at Fenway Park. A leadoff walk, and there's life for the Red Sox.
Kevin Millar faced 4 pitches outside the strike zone and walked to first base.
A pinch runner, Dave Roberts, is going to come in for Boston. He can run. Picked up from
Dave Roberts was a speedy utility infielder who specialized in stealing bases. The perfect player for a moment like this. So Roberts put his helmet on and walked out of the dugout. And he looked back at his manager, Terry Francona.
When he left the dugout, he glanced at me, and I just winked at him. And that was my way of saying, go ahead, big boy.
Roberts knew what he was sent in to do. No words were needed.
The non-communication with Roberts and Francona was always kind of magical, too. He didn't even tell him anything. He just said, Roberts, get in there.
Yankees pitcher Mariano Rivera, along with the whole world, knew why Roberts was there. To steal second base. Rivera threw over to first base 3 times trying to pick Roberts off. But then, Roberts ran.
Roberts is going. Posada's throw.
He sprinted and dived into second.
Safe.
Dave Roberts was safe. Once again, Stan Grossfeld was there to capture that fraction of a second.
I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would be in a great spot to capture Dave Roberts' slide. Just in a nick of time past Jeter. Bingo, there it is in 1,000th of a second of my life. And people will remember that moment forever. Not because of me, but because he stole the base.
Dave Roberts was in scoring position, and it felt like something was finally clicking for the Sox. And then Bill Miller hit a base hit up the middle of the field. Roberts came around to score, and the game was tied.
Up the middle. Roberts will come to the plate. The throw by Williams. Bill Miller has tied it.
That hit sent the game into extra innings. The Red Sox were still alive, and fans could believe again.
Roberts scores from second base to tie the game. It was a relief. I thought there was some hope.
Dave Roberts' steal was it. That's the whole thing. If he's called out, we're done. It's over, basically. He steals that base, and we have the slightest glimmer of hope.
It was an exciting play. We thought the game might have ended, but it kept it alive.
No matter what he does for the rest of his life, that's what he'll never have to buy a beer in Boston.
Yeah, after that, he's cruised forever. He's just a legend.
Game 4 went long. No one could get a run on the board, and it stayed tied. Then, at 1:22 in the morning, David Ortiz, a.k.a. Big Papi, walked up to the plate.
Ortiz into deep right field.
He smashed the ball into the Yankee bullpen. Home run.
We'll see you later tonight.
After a grueling 5 hours and 2 minutes, the Red Sox had won. the Sox prevented the Yankees from popping champagne at Fenway, at least for one more day.
As Tom Petty says even the losers get lucky sometime.
Stan watched as Kevin's words rang in everyone's ears. Don't count the Sox out just yet. Don't let them win tonight.
They were buying into the Millar mantra because it really, good stuff can happen. It's just not every day is going to be a bad day.
Fans lingered on Lansdowne Street outside the stadium until the early hours of the morning. The Game 4 win reinvigorated the team, and there was finally a feeling of possibility and a chance at redemption. The Sox players slept for a couple hours and, on the same calendar day, returned back to the ballpark for yet another do-or-die game. This time, the Red Sox finally drew first blood.
Is crunched into right, 3 straight hits, and the Red Sox take a lead.
In the bottom of the first, David Ortiz hit a single and scored the first run of the game. But just like the night before, the game was tied and went into extra innings. And again, the Sox were just one bad ball, one error, 1 inch from it all being over. Then, at the bottom of the 14th inning,
David Ortiz with another chance to win it.
For the second night in a row, Big Papi came up clutch with a line drive to center field. Johnny Damon scored. The Sox had won Game 5.
New York, Game 6 tomorrow night.
Sox fan Cheryl Cosmo was there that night.
It was the most nerve-wracking game I ever attended at Fenway Park. Nobody sat down for inning after inning. I am telling you, people stood up. And every time the Yankees made 3 outs and didn't score another run, you sat down for a minute, and then you got right back up again.
Dan Shaughnessy wrote that it was perhaps the most thrilling and torturous postseason game in 104 years of Red Sox baseball. Up next, Game 6 at Yankee Stadium. And just as Kevin had promised, the Sox had an ace up their sleeve, pitcher Curt Schilling.
If we win tonight, we have Pedro Game 5, Schilling Game 6.
But behind the scenes, there was a problem.
Schilling. Whoa! Fires that away.
Curt Schilling got hurt in New York, and we thought he was all done.
What's going on with Curt Schilling's foot? Could it be our undoing?
Coming up after the break, a bloody sock, a hunter's moon, and a sea of joy. Go take your 7th inning stretch. We'll be right back.
Hey, it's Mike Bello, Deputy City Editor for the Boston Globe. If you're enjoying this episode so far, please subscribe to this feed where we will periodically drop new and exciting stories when we have them. Sit with us and experience the best of the Boston Globe in your ears. So send a text to someone you know who would enjoy the podcast so they will never miss a drop.
Curt Schilling was one of the greatest postseason pitchers of all time. But before the Yankee-Red Sox series, Curt had gotten injured. In the first postseason game against the Angels, Curt had torn the tendon in his right ankle, the kind of injury that would put a guy out for months.
The danger for Schilling is when that tendon crosses that ankle bone, if it were to rupture, it is a big deal for a guy about to turn 38 in November.
The Red Sox staff had thrown around a lot of ideas for how to get Curt ready for Game 6. Special high-top shoes and cortisone shots, but none of it was working. So the team doctors landed on something no one had tried before, an immediate desperate surgery in which they would sew Curt's ankle skin to the tissue underneath in order to keep his tendon in place. The doctors practiced the surgery on a cadaver.
Some Sox fan actually gave his life in the quest to overthrow the Yankees.
The practice surgery looked like a success. So in October of 2004, before Game 6, Curt Schilling limped into Terry Francona's office to talk to his manager. Here's Terry.
I remember Schill sitting on my couch in my office explaining to me what he wanted to do. And I had known Schill forever because I had him in Philly and, I've known him really well. I said, Schill, this could hurt your career moving forward. I just want, I kind of owed him that.
Terry knew it was a huge risk for Curt to play. He was 38. He didn't have many playing years left. If he blew his ankle, his career would probably be over. And
he said, I've wanted to pitch this game my whole life. And, You know, what's funny is I never doubted 1 minute that he would go out and find a way to pitch. And that's not fair because he had no business being out there. That's just how much belief I had in him.
The day before the game, Kurt had 3 stitches put in his ankle, but they still weren't sure if he could pitch. So Kurt went out to the mound to test out his ankle and see if it would hold. After a few pitches, Kurt gave the okay. He was going to pitch Game 6. The next day at Yankee Stadium, Kurt walked to the clubhouse and found Kevin playing his part as the team's hype man.
I felt that I was a ringleader in that team.
Kevin was walking around, pumping up the guys, reminding them of who they were. But for a game of this magnitude, with this much on the line, words were not enough. So Kevin pulled out a bottle of whiskey. Time for Plan B, liquid courage.
He started pouring us shots of Jack Daniels. Like, we got nothing to lose. We might as well go out there and play with a little buzz going. And
That's Johnny Damon. Johnny says that one by one, the players lined up to tip back a shot of Jack Daniels. Now, conventional wisdom would tell you that drinking alcohol before getting a 90-mile-per-hour fastball hurled at your face is a bad idea. But the 2004 Red Sox team was never conventional.
I haven't seen any other team that I've been on for 18 years do that. But that 2004 Red Sox team, we were a band of brothers. So if one does something, we all do.
So they took their shots and ran out under the floodlights at Yankee Stadium.
Tim, you and I have done a lot of games here at Yankee Stadium over the years since we started together in '96. I can't ever remember this place being more alive than it is right now.
But the TV camera picked something up. Kurt's ankle was bleeding. His sock, just like the Sox logo, was literally turning red.
Blood-soaked sock around that right ankle. And the question is that the Marcaine itself that they're shooting into that ankle?
As the game continued, the camera kept zooming in on Kurt's bloody sock. Fans at home were nervous, sitting on the edge of their seats wondering, will his ankle hold?
Now, when his sock started to bleed, it got a little nerve-wracking. I mean, what's happening here? Could he keep going?
What's up with Curt Schilling's foot? We needed to know. It was like this big mystery. What's going on with Curt Schilling's foot? Could it be our undoing?
I mean, this is like stuff straight out of Hollywood.
Kurt went 7 innings, allowing just 1 run. A gutsy performance for a guy with this type of injury. It was miraculous. It was inspiring, and exactly what the Sox needed. They won the game 4-2 and forced Game 7. Because of Curt Schilling, the Red Sox were still alive.
And why wouldn't this rematch of last year's ALCS last 7 games?
You almost couldn't believe that somebody was willing to, risk the rest of their career to try to keep this series alive. It's inspiring.
Yeah, that was one of the gutsiest pitching performances I've ever seen.
You have to know the hitter that you're facing. You know where you have to place the ball. And some people can do it, and some people can't. And Schilling was a guy that could put it where he needed to put it.
On Wednesday, October 20th, it was time for Game 7 at Yankee Stadium. If the Sox were going to throw off the curse, they'd have to beat their bitter rivals in New York, in front of nearly 60,000 screaming Yankee fans. It all came down to this. 86 years after Harry Frazee sold Babe Ruth to the Yankees, 1 year after Aaron Boone crushed their hopes and dreams, the Sox had their chance at revenge. Fittingly, the Yankees played a few mind games before the game even started. Bucky Dent, yes, that Bucky Dent, threw out the ceremonial first pitch.
All those nights, all those 4 nights were school nights. I was a teacher. Everybody was coming in to school the next day, the kids and the teachers alike, like zombies. We could barely, nobody could focus on anything in the whole region.
The winner of this game moves on to the World Series to play the
In the first inning, clutch hitter David Ortiz rocketed a line drive into the right field bleachers.
And here's Ortiz. He rips one into right field. Back at the wall, 2-0 Red Sox.
In the second inning, Johnny Damon hit a grand slam to put the Sox up 6-0.
Johnny Damon, quiet all series, goes deep. 4 more runs, and it's 6-0.
From there, the Sox momentum continued. Damon hit a second homer in the fourth, and Mark Bellhorn socked one in the eighth. Yankees fans tried to psych out the Sox by chanting 1918 and waving signs that read, "The curse lives on." But none of that worked. The Sox were imperious, in total control.
Here it is, ground ball to second. Reese.
As the clock turned to midnight, it was all over. The Sox had done it. They completed one of the greatest comebacks in sports history.
The Boston Red Sox have won the pennant.
The Sox had taken down their arch-enemy, the Yankees, at their stadium and were headed to the World Series.
It's the only team in the history of the sport that's ever come back from a 3-0 deficit one time in 150 years, and it's those guys. I remember the Red Sox, the joy of celebrating in Yankee Stadium in their clubhouse and just drenching the carpet with their champagne. Again, a year earlier, they had gotten on that bus just weeping, crying in their beer. And now it just came together in this glorious fashion.
Fans rejoiced.
Really nothing quite like beating the Yankees. Again, I can't emphasize how much shit we talked and how obsessed we were with beating New York. Beating the Yankees after being down 3, it felt like an absolute miracle. It felt like God himself had chosen this team. It was absolute ecstasy.
That series always gives me goosebumps. I can feel myself getting a little flushed even now just talking about it.
I mean, we just were hooting and hollering, and it was sheer elation that night. It was really good to win at Yankee Stadium because they had lost at Yankee Stadium so many times. Finally, the looks on their faces, they were stunned, they couldn't believe it.
The Red Sox could all but taste a championship. But this thing wasn't over. The Sox still had one more series to win, and they'd have to defeat the St. Louis Cardinals, a team that had dominated the regular season in the National League. And the Red Sox general manager, Theo Epstein, was quick to remind everyone, hey, we're not done here.
Theo Epstein, who was always the smartest person in the room, had the presence of mind to say, now we have to go beat Finland.
So this is an ice hockey reference. If you've ever seen the movie Miracle on Ice, you'll know what Theo's getting at. At the 1980 Winter Olympics, the U.S. were huge underdogs in their semifinal game against the mighty Soviet Union. They beat the Soviets, but they still had to win the final.
Finland was the gold medal, but the Russians is all anybody remembers, and that was Red Sox Yankees.
And losing at the last minute, lifetime fans like Lucas Restivo from Burlington, Massachusetts, knew that this was a Red Sox specialty.
I distinctly remember a little feeling of dread within that celebration, being like, we do the impossible, then we lose the World Series. Like, this would be just like the most extreme pain. Like, this would be the curse manifold, you know, it would be torture. So there was this point, the feeling that like, you can't quite let go until we win the World Series.
Johnny Damon quietly felt the same. He high-fived his teammates and drank the champagne, but he wasn't ready to fully celebrate just yet.
Damn, we have another series. Like, we just spent all of our bullets in this, and everyone was saying nobody can beat the Cardinals. So we celebrated that night. We got back to Boston, and we were just getting prepared for the World Series.
Going into the World Series, there was no clear favorite. Both teams were stacked with talent. They'd both been through a grueling 7-game series to make the finals, and a lot of baseball experts thought it could go either way. Game 1 was played at Fenway Park on October the 23rd. The Sox weren't at their best that night, and they made a bunch of mistakes.
Ramirez has made back-to-back mistakes and left.
But they did just enough to win and keep the momentum going.
Into right right field again. Home run, Bellhorn.
In Game 2, Curt Schilling took the mound, still with stitches holding his ankle together.
The right-hander Curt Schilling, and he makes his 15th career postseason start.
Curt's ankles stayed together. He lasted 6 innings, giving up just 1 run, and the Sox won 6-2.
The Red Sox are up 2 games to none.
In Game 3, it was Pedro Martinez's time to shine. He pitched 7 scoreless innings. The Sox won 4-1. They were nearly there, so nearly there.
A dominating effort by the Red Sox in this World Series.
On the evening of Wednesday, October 27th, 2004, the Boston Red Sox and the St. Louis Cardinals faced off in Game 4 of the World Series. They played at the Busch Memorial Stadium in St. Louis. That night, a blood moon hung in the sky, casting everything below, the fans, the ballpark, the idiots, in an eerie, coppery hue.
There was all these, the larger forces and omens and, numerology and the moon, the blood red moon, those things. So, we were looking for clues and omens and voodoo and all kinds of the larger forces coming in to collect their debts.
Of course. The only way this curse could end was with help from the supernatural. For believers like lifelong Sox fan Rob Green, it was the final sign.
If you believe in fate and curses, why would the person in charge of fates, the Holy Spirit, why would they let you come back from 3-0 against the Yankees and then break your heart and have them lose the World Series? It's impossible. The fates couldn't do this to us.
Johnny Damon was first at bat, and he set the tone when he hit a massive home run, hit the ball high up towards the blood moon.
And that ball is ripped into right field. The Red Sox score first again.
The Sox scored 2 more runs in the third, and then their pitchers did the rest. And in the bottom of the ninth, with the score 3-0, the Red Sox brought Keith Foulke to close it out. On TV, announcer Joe Buck called out these famous words.
Back to Foulke. Red Sox fans have longed to hear it. The Boston Red Sox are world champions. Generations have.
And folks back in New England listening on their radios heard legendary announcer Joe Castiglione make the call.
And the Boston Red Sox are the world champions for the first time in 86 years. Can you believe it?
The curse was broken, and an 86-year drought had come to an end. The idiots were now the world champions.
With Johnny Damon, congratulations, the Red Sox, the idiots are World Series champions.
Absolutely. We know we're idiots, we know we're cowboys, but we also know we're world champions.
For Johnny Damon, it was a childhood dream come true.
The reason why I wanted to play baseball was because I saw George Brett hoist a World Series trophy when I was 12 years old, and that's exactly what I wanted to do. We reversed the curse, and we brought an entire nation together.
Terry looked on from his familiar place in the dugout with immense pride.
Pure joy. And I've said this, when you see your team climbing on each other, like, in the dog pile, when you see guys from different cultures, different backgrounds, all out there celebrating together, there's no better feeling. That's what you're looking for. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does, man, it's pure joy.
Boston Globe's Chad Finn remembers that night.
I went and called my dad immediately. Took a little minute out from actually cranking out whatever my assignment was that night and just checking in and saying, can you believe this? They actually did it.
Fans rushed down to Fenway and gathered in Kenmore Square. They hugged strangers, spilled beers, and cheered for their heroes. Here's Anna Kuzmer, Boston Globe audio producer and lifelong Sox fan.
This felt like this kind of scrappy group of friends, had prevailed and done it for us and did it for the city. And we were so attached to them as people. We were so happy to see them so happy. They were like our friends, our uncles, like our dads. That's how it felt.
The team celebrated and somehow rallied themselves onto a flight from St. Louis back to Boston. At the crack of dawn, they touched down at Logan International Airport. This is Johnny Damon again.
We were drinking some Jack Daniels, some Miller Lights. We were having a great time heading back, and I remember when we landed, we had so many fans out cheering us on, getting off the airplane.
Kevin Millar.
We got on the buses and the sun was just coming up in Boston. And there were people everywhere on the streets waving at our buses from the airport. Like, this just happened. It was unbelievable.
Terry Francona.
People hanging off the Mass Pike with signs and were stopped. You know, when they saw our caravan, you know, they're not even driving. They're just parked and they're out of their cars and they're clapping and yelling. And it just, you know, it's shocking to see the whole city just stop like that was kind of crazy and certainly touching.
Boston threw an official party for the Red Sox a couple days later. A special victory parade for the idiots. Kevin, Johnny, Manny, Big Papi, and all the guys. They piled onto a procession of duck boats down the Charles River. If you're not familiar, the duck boats are a classic Boston tourist attraction. They're trucks that go into the water.
When the players got on the duck boat, it was party time. 7:20 in the morning, Trot Nixon's popping open a beer, saluting fans that are down on the fence in front of Simmons College.
As you guessed, Stan was there to capture the day.
It was a cold, raw day. Manny was underdressed for the thing. I remember he was freezing. I gave him my hat. People were cheering and standing on the tops of buildings and leaning out windows, and confetti was raining down. It was the definition of joy. Somebody gave Manny a sign that said, "Jeter's playing golf today, this is better." Orlando Cabrera had a broom and he was doing the sweep thing on it. Pedro's just jazzed up and talking all sorts of nonsense about how they own the town now. And he was right, they did own the town.
As the duck boats dunked into the Charles, Stan noticed one player who was not so thrilled about the amphibious nature of the parade.
When they got to the river, I noticed Ortiz. He got really nervous, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? And then he put an orange life preserver around his neck and fastened it on. And I guess he can't swim. Meantime, the Yahoos from Boston were like, some of them just dove into the water like it was holy water to be around these baseball gods. It's just a sea of joy.
The boats rose out of the Charles and headed towards Fenway.
I saw truck drivers climbing on top of their rigs and bowing in prayer. I mean, it was freaking wild. And then when you got closer to Fenway, the crowds got bigger and bigger, and it was like the Beatles landing at JFK. I got to tell you, I've been all over the world, but I've never seen so much joy in one place on earth than the Red Sox duck boat parade. The joy that was echoing through the streets and the Charles River was unparalleled in my whole lifetime. Like a collective screaming sigh of relief from people that the demons had been exorcised. A liberation of the city of Boston, of the spirits, the curse, but just the frustration and maybe some energy from those that have passed. You could just feel it all.
For the past 20 years, writers and movie directors have leapt at the opportunity to tell the story of the greatest comeback in sports. Fans devour books and documentaries recounting each epic moment of the drama. Curt Schilling's Bloody Sock was auctioned off years later for more than $92,000. The 2004 World Series championship has become an essential part of New England identity and Boston lore. Fans told us it united the community.
This is why people love sports, right? Because we can fall in love and have it all work out and have these beautiful moments together.
There's so much of them in me, in my fabric of my relationships, and in so much collective joy and commonality and ways to relate with other people that they gave us. And it's a very enduring thing that helps people feel less alone. And I think that's really beautiful and important.
For Boston Globe sports writer Chad Finn, it also united generations.
My daughter's 20, so when the Red Sox won in 2004, when they beat the Cardinals and clinched in Game 4, I went and dug her out of her crib to just say, I was holding you when the Red Sox won the World Series. And that's absolutely the best thing about sports is to share it with somebody you care about, or to see that your fandom is carried on to the next generation.
We're on the monster level now. If you walk around this ballpark, there'll be about 100 plaques, just another indication that it's really a living museum at this point.
A couple weeks ago, Cheryl Cosmo showed me around Fenway Park. Cheryl's an official Red Sox tour guide. She started giving tours after retiring.
So when people come here, this is baseball history that can't be matched. It's like a pilgrimage, it really is.
Cheryl shows fans and tourists all of the landmarks, walks them through the team's history, the triumphs, and the disappointments.
Okay, now Bucky Dent's home run. We're never going to forget that. He's up there. But when he hits the ball, it lands right about here.
It's funny. Listening to Cheryl and other Sox fans talk about their memories of these big losses, they sound wistful. And you get the sense sometimes that they miss it. They miss the losing. And for some, being a Red Sox fan was never the same after they won, because the romance of being an underdog was lost.
They never were the same once they won in 2004, because once they won, it just took away that charm and that neediness. They were like everybody else after that. They were special before they won in 2004, and they were special when they won in 2004. But then they kind of just became another really good team.
To be a Red Sox fan before 2004 meant to love your team despite constant disappointment. But what did it mean now? Here's Jamie Andrews from Weymouth.
I think that almost ruined me as a Red Sox fan. Because how can you get up for the next season? You know you're never going to have it like that again. It was almost like a huge weight. Like, I had to be there when they won. I had to watch every game. I was like Ulysses or something. I had to get to the end of this journey. But then when it happened, it really felt like I reached the end.
And so, while some fans don't watch every game with the same fight or energy that they did before, New Englanders will never forget where they were when the curse was broken in 2004. The story of the Red Sox is about the scrappy underdog punching back. It's about decades of suffering and often irrational faith rewarded. It's about appreciating the hard times, because rock bottom makes victory that much sweeter.
What does the story mean to you?
It's utopia, happiness on earth, universal happiness. There's no bad people. There's no crime. There's no starvation. There's no any of the ills of our society. There's none of that for one glorious 2-hour ride. The world is perfect, the way it's supposed to be, at least in the city of Boston. People are nice to each other. It's love and joy. Amen.
I mean, I've had a long career as a sports writer, and I've always said this is the best place to do my chosen field, to be a sports columnist. There's just no better place to do what I do, and I feel very blessed to have been able to cover this team for so many years. But to have lived and witnessed and given voice to that particular period, to see the decades of frustration, to chronicle that, to put a name on it, and then to see them throw it off. And when I get asked what's the best story you've ever covered, it's always the 2004 Red Sox. It's a biblical kind of sports story that's timeless. It changed everything, and there'll never be anything as good again.
And now, your Boston Globe podcast team. Tonight's starting pitchers. This episode was written and produced by Steph Brown and Matthew Nelson. The Boston Globe's batting order. The podcast is produced by Steph Brown, Matthew Nelson, and Jasmine Aguilera. Our audio intern is Mara Melitz. In the dugout, our editor and executive producer is Kristen Nelson.
Senior Assistant Sports Editor Katie McInerney saw this project through and was our clutch hitter. And behind the plate, our fact checker is Matt Mahoney. Our theme music is composed by Sam Bagola, mixing and sound design by Uzair Ahmed. Special thanks to Boston Globe sports editor Matt Pepin and deputy sports editor Scott Thurston, and to Boston Globe editor Nancy Barnes.
And lastly, in not my announcer voice, a huge thank you to all the Sox fans who shared their stories with us: Cheryl Cosmo, Anna Kuzmer, Mike Jem, Benjamin Cherry, Lucas Restivo, Rob Green, and Jamie Andrews.
And I'm your announcer, live from the press box, Jasmine Aguilera.
I do wanted your normal voice.
And I'm your announcer, live from the press box, Jasmine Aguilera. And just a quick note, the Boston Globe's owner, John Henry, also owns the Red Sox. This was an independent Globe production.